Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Catholic ReCon Testimonies from Reverts and Converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask. This week's guest is Patti Defilippis. You may remember seeing Leonardo. I interviewed him, and we had such a great time. I'm so pleased, Patti, to have you here on the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Eddie. Good to be here.
So Patti is director and screenwriter. She is the director of all the St. Luke Productions live dramas and the screenwriter for the feature film Thérèse, a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Theater. She began her career at the Alley Theater in Houston, Texas. She then acted in the Fort Worth Shakespeare Festival as well as various dinner theaters. We're going to get into the rest of her bio as we move along here. But Patti, let's start with your upbringing. Anything that you can think of that relates to, I guess, the story of what you would call a faith journey, faith testimony.
Yes, I would say, first of all, I grew up in New Jersey, and I grew up in a faithful Presbyterian family. My dad and mom had us we went to Sunday school every week, and we said grace before meals, and God was always a part of my life in the sense of I don't think I ever went through a time where I didn't believe in God. I graduated from college in 1977, and I graduated, high school in 73. So that was kind of we think of this time that we're in right now as being a time with a lot of confusion, but there's actually, I think, more clarity about good and evil than there was back then. I think there was more of a sense of desire to do what felt good and what felt right, and it was very subjective time. So I when I went away to college, I I wanted to be loved, and I wanted to be accepted, and I also really knew what I wanted to do with my life. As far as, I didn't have any question about what I was going to major in. I always knew I was going to go into theater, and from the time I was like in fourth grade, I think,
Oh,
and so I applied to all kinds of different schools, conservatory type places, and I ended up at the University of North Carolina, and I was really immersed in the fine arts program there, their undergraduate program. And so I graduated from there, and then I just went on with my career, and I was very intent on being successful at that. I'm not naturally a very ambitious person or a very competitive person, but I just really wanted to be part of that world, and I was able to do that. I was able to work in theater in Houston, and then at different places other than there, and finally ended up at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And always, though, I think I had a sense of a desire for, if I could say anything, it would be desire for truth. I just really wanted to be, sometimes I'm too forthright in what I think, and like, you got to say everything you think, everything you feel, exactly how you feel it, and that's not always so good. But I was at that time very very much wanted that, and I had no idea where that was. And I grew up in a culture that was very ethnically diverse. I knew I had lots of Jewish friends, I had lots of Catholic friends, I had Black people in my school, and it was a very, it's the Northeast. There's a lot more immigrant populations there, but I never thought of becoming a Catholic.
I'm
Like, I could
curious.
imagine being like, it would be like me saying, yeah, that's nice that you're Jewish or that you're Black. I mean, it wouldn't have occurred to me that you could actually choose that.
Oh, okay. I
No,
see what you're
it
saying.
was like,
Yeah.
it's just like a cultural thing.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
there, and I never went in. I mean, I did a lot of traveling and went to Europe and did things like that, but I saw beautiful churches and everything, but it didn't occur to me that it was something available to me.
Well, were you going to the Presbyterian church through these years?
Yeah, off and on. I mean,
Okay.
there's no obligation there,
Sure.
it was just like, it was something familiar and that I loved. And I would find, even in Europe, to go to the Presbyterian, the Protestant Presbyterian church, I think in Paris.
Hmm.
I was studying over there, and so yeah, I was going, but I wasn't living that as a way of life,
Got it. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And so what was so attractive, I think, about the theater, when I think of the theater and you're pursuing that which is true, do you remember what was so attractive about that world?
I think it was partially the sense of being part of something that you like everybody who's like when you're a kid and you're in a high school play, everybody, even the nerdiest person who is in the cast or on the crew, they're all part of the group, and they all are part of the group, and you feel part of something that's bigger than you, and that you're accepted into it. And also, I do think I really enjoyed the creative aspect of it as well. I loved, of course, I loved applause, and I loved the craft of it. And I still do. I still love the craft of how to make something work in film and in theater. I find it very challenging and rewarding, and I did then. It was fascinating to me. So, and I saw a lot of theater. I grew up outside of New York City, and I would be like so fascinated that I wanted to see the makeup and go backstage and see. I just loved the way that it was put together, and it just it was magical to me. And I still find that so cool, to
Yeah.
be part of that.
No, that's beautiful. And you talk about how challenging it is. And I think that a lot of people will speak about having this intuitive sense of what will work, what won't work. But even with the intuitive sense, there's still so much to putting together a good story and
Right.
conveying the right emotions and all of that.
Right.
When you were in that world for many, many years, do you and
Well, relatively speaking, I mean,
rel relatively speaking, there you go. Do you remember a point? I think I asked Leonardo the same thing. Do you remember a point where you were in that community? Yes, you mentioned that you're seeking truth. Do you remember feeling any type of void in that? So you have this community, you have what you were essentially looking for at that phase of your life. Do you remember feeling a little bit of a gap or a void?
yeah, absolutely. And especially because, it's a pretty secular world. And even more so then. I think Christians are more in the public eye now than, they may be not liked, but they're more in the public eye as far as people are aware. Oh, you're a Christian. Oh, I see,
Yeah.
but then it was like, it was so unusual. And yeah, I definitely think I felt a void. I think I felt that I was being blown along with my relationships, and they weren't very fulfilling, and they weren't very deep, and that and they were dangerous too. You know, um, they weren't safe places for me to be, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I really. I guess I must have felt that because I was very hungry for that,
Mm.
and when I did discover that that was available, I don't know, I just feel so fortunate because I don't know, I didn't know anything, I wasn't like studying religion. I was just I really came into Catholicism in a way that was not very well read or intellectual.
Got it. Okay. So all you knew was the Presbyterian faith. There'd be no reason for you to think about any other
Well, I got
denomination.
fascinated in it because I started reading. I read Graham Greene. Have you ever read Graham Greene?
I've not. No.
He's a Catholic writer, and he writes it's fascinated. He wrote in like I think probably mostly in the 40s.
Okay.
He was really fascinated with the concept of sin and what was forgivable, how great is God's mercy, I guess. And that really, I remember I was in Norway for Christmas when I was in college, and I read his book, The Heart of the Matter. And I mean, it's kind of a depressing book. I mean, I started reading it again and I was like, oh my gosh, this is really depressing. But at the time, it was the first time that I ever read something where I went, that's what I want. You know, that kind of deep analysis of reality was what I was really longing for. And it was the first time I ever had that sense of like, wow, this is like something you could choose to do. And then it
Oh,
went away, and I was like, then I went and had all kinds of other directions and everything. But it was that moment, I think, that was the kind of the first time I just felt that little glimmer of, huh, you know, maybe that's the way. Maybe that's the way for me.
got
And
it.
um, and then it just, like I said, I had a kind of wild couple of years or 3 years, you know, of just I was never a bad person, but just wayward, you know, and then it then that's when my conversion happened, was when I was
Okay.
at Shakespeare Festival in Ashland.
In Ashland. Okay. So you have the seed planted, so to speak. Do you remember as you're reading that book, what was it? Graham Greene, you said,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Was it pretty clear throughout that here is a Catholic person, or did you have to go to the back cover and say, okay, what is
No,
this?
no. It's really, I mean, I can't remember the story exactly, but it's definitely, I mean, anybody that probably your viewers somebody will go, oh yeah, it's a very well-known book. And I just don't remember the plot right now, but
No, that's fine. I
it's,
was just curious if it was clear. Okay.
yeah, it was totally clear, you
Yeah.
know, and so that was just sort of the first glimmer of that. And then it took me a long time and a lot of suffering, not a long time, relatively speaking. Like I said, you know, at that time I was in school and I was 20, and
Yeah.
I became a Catholic when I was 25. So
Okay. So when you speak of suffering during those years, what was that, just mental,
yeah,
trying to find your path? What is truth?
well, it was just that I was making a lot of bad choices,
Yep.
and
Suffering the consequences of the
yeah, just being
choices. Yeah.
unhappy, or, you know, thinking I was happy, I mean, I had a lot of success at that time too, you know, I was
Yeah.
working in theater and was really exciting and fun and everything, but, you know, just regrets about that period of time. So,
Yeah, I understand for sure. So then you end up at this festival in Ashland,
uh-huh.
Oregon. Was it a huge, I forget, I think Leonardo talked about it as well.
Yeah, we met there. We
That's where
met.
you met him. Okay, so why don't you take us back to that time? How did that all go down?
Well, I mean, I'd worked at the Alley Theater, and it was a pretty big deal to get into this Shakespeare Festival. I mean, I flew out and I auditioned, and I got the job, and I was really thrilled, and I traveled out with my brother and my two sisters, and we drove out together, and I got settled there. And I just remember when I went to audition there, you know, Medford, Oregon. I don't know if you've ever been to Medford, Oregon, but
Hmm.
it's not the most beautiful place in the world. But I got off the plane there and I thought, this is where I'm supposed to live. This is where this is where I'm going to be, is the Northwest. And this is 1980. And then I just, I just went, and I got into the festival, and there was, as I said, probably it was less common then than it is now. I mean, you're living in a world of not secular, you know, you have a community of people that you're working with, and I do too, that believe what you believe. But, you know, in theater, it was just very uncommon for people to express their faith at all. And so, of course, Leonardo was there, and he had been there a year before me as an actor, and he he was just, you know, so different. I mean, he was like really, he had gone through this conversion experience, and he was like, he was riding his bike everywhere, and he wasn't staying out late at the, because people, you know, it's nightlife type of a life, because
Yeah.
you're working till 10 or 11 at night, and or you know, until the show is over, and then you go out and you're wound up, so you go out and have a drink or something, and you know, it was not terrible, but you know, he was just so unusual. And they started having a Bible study, or they had been having it, I guess, at somebody's house who was an established person in the company, who had an actual home there. And we would go, we'd go there once a week, and we'd have soup and bread and do Bible study stuff. And so this was very, very kind of community building, and these were all people who were in the company. And so there was this kind of sense of community, of Christian community. Not of all of them were Catholic, but he was Catholic, and he was getting up and going to mass every morning. I mean, you know, like, and he didn't even have a car. So he would be like staying at different, he'd be like house sitting at people's houses, and living in this tiny little apartment, and just doing, you know, living on the edge, but very ascetical type of an existence. And so I was just, we became friends, and I started going to daily mass. And I can remember when I went into this just simple church of Our Lady of the Mountain in Ashland, Oregon. And I just went in, and I didn't know anything about Catholicism. I didn't know about the Eucharist. I didn't know about the saints. I just knew about the restrictions that you're going to have, your life is going to hit you if you become a Catholic. You know, you're not going to be able to do certain things. But I didn't, I just walked in and thought, well, this is it. This is it. You know, this is it. This is true. And I don't know. I mean, I read like Cardinal Newman, you know, you think the smartest person you can imagine. I mean, he struggles and struggles, and reading his biography, is fantastic biography, you know, autobiography. And I just thought, you know, when I look back, I think, how did I just have that given to me? You know, I just went in, and it was like, okay, that's, now what do I do next? You know?
Did you lean over and tell Leonardo, hey, this is true?
No.
You
And
kept that to yourself.
he was with, there was all these girls that were following and going into mass, and kind of in his like, you know, he's like a Pied Piper with,
Oh,
and so, you know, I, I just started exploring it, and then talked to the priest there, and started going through the process of becoming a Catholic. But it was life changing, you know, because my lifestyle was not in keeping with that, and I had to really go, okay, this is not just like an idea.
yeah.
This is a whole change. And so, you know, that was just the beginning, right? You know, a conversion is not something that happens, at least, you know, suddenly, and that's
Yeah,
it.
it's ongoing.
Ongoing.
Absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
there are many years of like layers of deepening that happened after that. But that was the first time. And I feel very grateful, because I really didn't prep for it. You know, I was just kind of a mess, and not terrible. You know, like if you talk to my parents, they would say, oh no, you weren't, you know, you were fine. And they didn't even know all of the things that were going on with the way
Yeah,
I was.
but it's based on how you feel, you know. It's
Yeah,
everyone can look at each other and say, "Oh, I'm not as bad as this guy or that guy or whatever," but you know, hey,
yeah,
I need I need truth.
yeah. But I don't
Yeah.
even think I even knew I needed it, you know.
Oh,
This was
okay. So it just hit you so wow.
I mean,
That is
I
such
was
a
I was
tremendous
kind of like,
grace.
yeah, I don't know. It was very strange. When I think back on it, at the time, it was just like, oh, this is the next step. Let's go ahead and do this, you know, and you know, and you don't really know what you're getting into as far as
Yeah.
what you're taking on. You
Were
just
you
trust. You don't. I didn't understand things until I believed them.
mm, take
Mm,
the foot? take the foot, go forward, take the foot, go forward. Yeah, I've heard that many times. Were you vocal about what you were experiencing with the community that you were in or with family?
I think, yes, I was. I mean, we were kind of a close-knit group, and
Yeah.
I decided I came into the church in 1981, and I probably made that decision probably sometime around the fall of 80, you know.
Okay.
So maybe before that, maybe the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
That was a big change. I mean, even the people I was hanging around with. So it was a powerful thing. And Leonardo was a big influence on me. I mean, it wasn't, he wasn't I didn't, have this relationship. So I thought, okay, I'll become a Catholic, but it did kind of grow at the same time of our relationship grew at that time. And then he got started with this crazy idea of doing these shows, and I was involved with that. And then it kind of it's just what's interesting because I had so much direction in my life as far as my career went.
Yeah.
And I was gonna keep working as an actor, and that involves auditioning all over the country and getting your equity card and all this kind of stuff that you have to do to succeed in that world. And so, I kind of turned everything around.
Did you
Yeah.
get much pushback at that stage?
Not really. I think I wrote to my grandfather, and my parents, I think my mom actually came to the mass where I entered the church. They lived in Texas at the
Okay.
time, and they still do. So I don't know, they really didn't give me much pushback. I don't think they knew what I was getting into either. I mean, it's like, if somebody said, well, I'm going to go to the Anglican church, or I'm going to go to
No.
they weren't like anti-Catholic people. They had a great knowledge of the world. And my mother is from a different country. And so, they had a lot of exposure to all kinds of different things. So it wasn't that. I don't think there is times when it's been a little bit of pushback since in the later years, but
Sure.
mostly they've been very, very supportive, and they've come to first communions of my kids and baptisms and all that kind of thing. They're very, very loving and supportive. So
That's great. That's great. And then considering the time, you mentioned how subjectivity, relativism was definitely around. Did people just say in your circle, "Hey, you do you," or what was if there wasn't
there's a
pushback?
lot of Catholics, in theater. They aren't
Yeah,
necessarily going to church, but
they
there's
aren't what? Say that again.
not necessarily going to
Oh,
church.
okay.
You know,
Yeah.
but they relate to it on a, you know, that's cool type of that you feel connected to them in that way,
In that way.
as
Yeah.
they think that they don't see a problem with the way they're living their Catholicism.
And that's been the case for I don't know how long,
Yeah.
but just to say, "Hey, I'm a Catholic." Oh, what does that mean? I'm a Catholic. You don't have to go any
Yeah,
further. I'm just making a statement. I'm a Catholic. Does that mean you go to church? Just no, not necessarily. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, there people were happy for me, and I mean, it was kind of weird though because the festival, the Shakespeare Festival, the season runs. It starts like in the spring with the indoor shows, and then it goes to the summer. It goes on the outdoor stage. So we were in rehearsals at Easter time, and we had a show on Easter Vigil night, the night before Easter. So I had to enter the church that, it was the very early stages of RCIA. And I entered on Easter morning because I couldn't go to
Oh,
the Easter Vigil because I had a show that night, and then I had a matinee that day, on Easter. So
what a
yeah,
busy weekend. Oh my
so
goodness.
yeah, so we went out to breakfast, and then I went and and I at least did one show that day on Easter Sunday. So yeah.
Incredible, Patty. So I have to ask you because I'm again thinking of Leonardo's story. He
Uh-huh.
ended up getting on fire about these shows, and you were mentioning you start to kind of adopt that idea. Was there a time where you said, "Okay, it's all Catholic all the time," Do you remember what that felt like, the emotions that were coming forth by the time you were received into the church? Would you call yourself on fire and ready to do whatever it is that God asked you to do?
In theory, yes.
I love the honesty. Yes, in theory. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that was my goal. I'm sure I was
Yeah.
just very much on fire, like,
Yeah.
here, mom and dad, here's this icon for your Christmas present. Oh, thank you very much. It's just like, okay, she's just kind of she's into that now. So yeah, no, I haven't really looked back though. So
Incredible. So can you speak to, I don't know, pick out a few memories from the past, I don't know, 20 years of what it's like to be on the road, to have such an impact in certain communities with these live shows, with the screenwriting, all of these things that are touching lives. What's that like?
well, there's just millions of stories, just hilarious situations, that we've been in, like when we went for a long time, for the first few years, we have 7 kids. So for the first 2 kids, no, really, mostly for the first child, I traveled. I was the person traveling with him. So I had this baby, and from the time when I had the baby, I had her in March, and we were working on the Gospel of John at that time, and it is a mammoth production, and even then it was even more mammoth in the sense of the set was huge, and we had to try to fit it into a truck, and
Wow.
it's all done in, I don't know if you talked about that at all, but it's like all done in the style of a Byzantine icon, and he changes costumes all the time, and he's like wearing all these different symbolic colors, and we would not have very big technology at that point. This is 1985, and so we just put this thing together, and I had to run this big reel-to-reel tape recorder, which makes a lot of noise if you click it, and he's reading all of his lines are all of the lines of Jesus in the Gospel of John. So I'm clicking that. So I had to be in a separate room from him. And so it was just crazy because I was in the sacristy. I couldn't even watch the show, and I'm doing the lights and the sound, and I can't even see what I'm doing. So we had some pretty hilarious situations where would be out there, and and the character of John the Baptist is in iconography, he's portrayed with wings, you know. So he's John the Baptist, and he comes out and he's got these big silk wings on, and he's trying to, and I am just like spacey in the back, and trying to get the lights to go on and off, and I'm running all these lights, and he's like, Patti, lights, and it's just like, and so we took to saying it in Russian because people wouldn't know what we were saying if the lights were not on, and he was out there in the dark, and he'd go, Svet! and I'd be just like, oh, and
Oh
get it
my
to turn
gosh.
on, and we had these scenarios. We were taking this baby around with us, and she was like, when he had to, we were gonna do the show, and he comes in, I see what he's doing with the show, and I realize I've got to get to work. I just postpartum with this 6-week-old baby. We're going to leave on the road when she's 6 weeks old, and we're going to go start touring around with this.
Wow.
And so I just said, well, I got to just get out of bed here and get to work. So we went over to the high school that was next to our apartment, and we set it all up, and he carried the baby around while he was doing all the lines, and then we'd have these babysitters wherever we went. That was part of the deal, that they had to have a babysitter for us. So we go into one place, and so we go into this one place, and it's on the coast somewhere, and we go into this place, and it is so creepy. This is a home where people are going to watch my baby, and it was, the smell in there, it was horrible. Everything was awful, and so we kind of just leave the baby there And then I just go out in the car and I just start sobbing. And I'm saying, I can't do this. I can't leave her there. And so we go running back to the door and we go, I'm sorry. We have a change. We're doing something different. And we just grab the baby and take her back. And I have to do the show with her there, while I'm trying to do the show. So, there's so many times. But then there are beautiful things too, because like we were at this Skid Row sort of area of Portland, and there was this place called the Downtown Chapel, and there was an alcoholic guy who was a street person or something who was there, who was seeing the show, and I asked him to hold the baby in the audience. She was little, like newborn, and he's holding the baby in the audience, and then he said that was so moving to him because he had lost his family, and wasn't able to hold a baby. She was head of ministry even at that point in her life. We did so many crazy things. It was just.
And the stories keep coming, I assume.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, they just keep coming. But there's a lot of laughs, when you look back.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So another question I love to ask, I don't always ask it. If you were, and I don't know if you've had the opportunity, if you were to address a young woman that's around mid-20s, like you were when you had that experience, and is looking for truth, what would you impart to her?
I guess I would say trust. And also try praying, because ask God to answer your prayers, because in a moment of desperation, I did that. And I just didn't know what else to do. So I guess I would say, if you feel like that you're not worthy of this, that you should just try to open up the door a little bit. It's a complicated thing to try to advise somebody. All their circumstances are
Of course. Yeah.
But it does really move me and make me want to keep doing something that has the potential to touch people, because there's just so many hurting people, especially young people, that are just aimless and they don't know, they don't even know.
They don't even know. Completely agree. Yeah.
It's a great heartache to see, and I have kids myself, so that are in that age range, but they're doing okay. They're doing okay, thanks be to God, with their faith. So yeah. But
well, I'm always hopeful that there will be that one person that comes across such a video and is able to open their heart. I think that was the prayer we had before we hit record. And I just feel optimism despite what so many of us have seen and heard in that age range, for sure. So Patti, I want to end with saying, I believe I said this to Leonardo, your rosaries, the rosaries that you've done, the audio recordings, are so impactful, and they've touched many lives. I've personally have received different comments about them as we utilized them on the Amen app. And so I appreciate the work that you've done there, and all the plays that you've put on. Hopefully you will be able to come out to my neck of the woods. I don't know. We'll see. When was the last time you came out to Idaho?
I don't know when the last time they performed out there. I think it might have been, I don't know, Leonardo's in the other room. He could tell me. But
Leonardo, yeah.
But it's
lights.
It probably was. It's been a while. The offices have wanted us to come out, and we've got friends in Boise, so yeah, we'd love to.
That would be great. Do you want to add anything else, Patti, about your journey or faith in general, the Catholic faith?
such a blessing to me. I can't believe I've been able to be so fortunate to be on this adventure all these years. And I'm very grateful for my faith. That's the biggest thing that I think has been, I just can't believe I've got it. You know, it's such a gift.
Well, thank you, Patti, for your
Yeah.
time. Thank you for your testimony, and really appreciate it. Everyone, please share the video as usual. And until next time, take care and God bless. Bye.
Thanks, Betty. Bye-bye.